Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community. The sun was shining, and the air was calm. Overall, it was a very pleasant day. So you might wonder why I was standing in a graveyard, pissing on a headstone. It's okay. It is my wife's headstone. My name is Tony DiLorenzo, and I'm a mob boss. I tried to trace the letters of her name, but my bladder ran out first. Gloria DiLorenzo is a long name, and I'm getting older. Lower capacity, you know. I looked at the stone. It was a double. It was designed for a husband and wife to rest in peace together for eternity, or at least until some builder wanted to put a development on this land. I knew I'd never join her there. To be exact, I will not lie next to a 304, under the husband banner. She chose the easy way out, ending her life, with only her birth and death dates inscribed. You should have heard the complaints from the committee that oversaw this graveyard. They bitched and moaned about the inscriptions as not being fitting for their community. Well, I'm a really nasty a-hole and they didn't stand a chance. After my boys talked to a few members, all but one woman agreed to the inscription. Now that woman was a fat old bitch. She had a little money and thought she ruled the world. I had some friends break both her legs. While she was recovering in the hospital, her house burnt down. Twice because the damn fire department reacted a little too quickly the first time. The second time the department was reacting to a false alarm across town when her house started again. This time they were only able to save the basement. Yep, I told you I was a a-hole. She moved out of state, permanently. Looking at the date, I realized that Gloria had been here about 6 years now. I examined my heart and found I still hated her. Well, she did piss me off. She died before I could make her suffer for breaking my heart. Okay. I've got a little free time, so I'll go back and tell you all about it. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. A neighborhood where you either joined a gang, or you got the shit beat out of you daily. I wasn't exactly stupid. I joined a gang. These gangs were ethnic. The one I joined was Italian just like I was. I graduated from high school and went to the local community college. Believe me, that was an accomplishment for my neighborhood. The local godfather invited me to join his society because I had finished college. It was an invitation one didn't turn down. My life in crime was set in cement from that point on. I met my late wife about 5 years later. I was running a successful new car dealership. Did you ever notice that mob-operated businesses were always successful? Some of them never seemed to do any business, but always had cash. The other businesses had no completion, figures. I had a new car dealership that only had competition from other mob-owned businesses. Like I said, no real competition. I met Gloria on a trip I took to Las Vegas. It was an auto dealer's convention, and I was going there just for fun. She was a cocktail waitress there. We both had things the other liked at first sight. I had lots of money and was spending like a drunken sailor. Well, actually, she had a lot more going for her, but I'm a guy and guess what I noticed first? The second thing I liked about her I saw when she turned around and walked away. Okay, so she had a great body too. She came up to our table and asked, "Can I take you order?" Of course, had a million pickup lines in my head. I opted for, yes. One of the other guys at the table ordered a bottle of Jack Daniels and 6 glasses. She counted 5 of us and asked, "Who's the 6th one for?" Expecting someone else? "You darling, of course." The a-hole replied. She gave him a big smile and giggled. "Can I have the rest of your orders, please?" And that's how the evening went. My buddy was scoring big time, and I was putting my foot in my mouth at every opportunity. She went off shift at midnight. The guys hit their rooms, and I went into the diner for a late-night snack. I picked one with a buffet and was standing there trying to make up my mind when I heard, "Why can't you make up your mind? You did fine in the lounge." I spun around to give whoever it was a piece of my mind when I looked into a million-watt smile. Our waitress from the lounge was standing next to me. She said, "The food's really good here. Let me help you choose. Oh, and by the way, my name's Gloria." We ate together and talked. Boy, did we talk. It was 4 a.m. when we left. She asked, "Can we meet for a snack tomorrow night?" And we did. Every night for the next 4 nights. It would have been longer, but I had a flight out. 2 weeks later, I was back and we had continued our late-night snacks. At the end of the first week, we had breakfast in bed also before going back to sleep. We needed the rest. By the time I was there for a week, she agreed to home with me on a trial basis. Our trial basis lasted about 18 months before we married in a civil ceremony. We didn't want our daughter to be born out of wedlock. 3 years later, our son was born. I was complete. I had a beautiful wife and 2 great kids, and I was moving up in the crime organization. My car dealership was doing nicely, but my piece of the organization was really bringing in the bucks. Crime really does pay if you're smart enough not to get caught. I was very smart. The years went by. Both my kids were in high school and my wife was a stay-at-home mom, trying to spend all my money at the local malls. Things were going great until I went to lunch with some of my friends in the family. Now I don't want to upset you. The lunch went off without a hitch. We talked business, in code, and had a great meal. The unpleasantness happened when I was getting in my car to go back to the dealership. There was a large manila envelope lying on my passenger seat. My name was on the outside. For some reason, I knew I shouldn't open it until I got back to my office. The paper shredder was there. It might be information about the organization that I would read once and destroy. When I opened the envelope in my office, I got the shock of my life. There were 8 by 10 photos of my wife having sex with other men. That's right, other men. They were not gangbang photos, but my lovely wife having one-on-one sex with 6 different men. Each photo appeared to be taken in different bedrooms, each with a different man. There was a typewritten report also in the envelope. The report stated that my wife was part of a group that met and changed partners 1 or 2 times a week. The report went on to say that none of the participants were married to any of the others in the group. The report listed names, address, spouses, number of children, motel room numbers, and dates the meetings took place. I had enough information for any good divorce lawyer to ply his trade. The only problem is that in my line of business, divorces cause loss of face. If man in my field of work, and I didn't mean the car dealership, couldn't control his wife, it was thought he was too weak to control his territory. The wives of most of my associates understood the score. When asked if they cheat, most replied, "Not on your life, my husband would kill me." And they meant exactly that. It appeared that my stupid wife didn't understand that. Well, I guess it's time to teach her a lesson. My first thought was just to have them all disappear, but then I realized that 12 individuals vanishing all at once just had to raise suspicion with the police. And when the cops figured out that one of the disappearances was my wife, the shit would hit the fan. So I couldn't take the easy way out. So, I started my planning. The first thing I needed to know was exactly what the extent of the problem was and spread the word that I knew it was happening and was in the process of retribution. I then let it be known why I just didn't whack them. Before Gloria screwed over me, I got along with the local cops and the county sheriffs. I tried to make sure that any of my enterprises did not cause them any extra work. They appreciated the thoughtfulness. If their personal vehicle broke down on the street, I'd send out a tow truck from my dealership to help if possible or tow them wherever they wanted. If the car broke down on their wife or girlfriend, my tow operators would bring them back to the dealership and let them use one of our loaners. If they asked, we would repair the car. The towing and the loaner were part of our service and not charged to the police officer. If their car needed repair, the labor was free and the parts were at my cost. I also offered installment payments if the repairs proved too costly for the officer. If the officer dropped his car off for routine service, oil changes, tire changes, and such, we washed and waxed the vehicle and detailed the interior. I think that little courtesy made us the most friends on the force. When it came time for a police officer to need a new personal vehicle, I gave them the vehicle at my cost whether it was new or used. I also carried the financing for them at 0 interest. If they brought in their patrol car, we cleaned that too. You'd be surprised how often drunks vomited in the back or scared kids lost bladder control when handcuffed and put in the back seat. One day I was challenged by a pesky newspaper reporter about these business practices and asked if it wasn't just a bribe. I replied, "These individuals work 24/7 protecting us from criminals. Most people take their efforts for granted. I don't. I can afford to help them when they need it. Someday you or I might need their help," I said. "I'd like to make sure that nothing was distracting them from helping us." The newspaper dropped the story. A few weeks later, the reporter's wife had a flat while taking their kids to school. It was a rainy, nasty day. One of my tow truck drivers stopped to offer assistance. With the wife and 2 kids squeezed into the front of his tow truck, he took off to get the kids to school on time. Then with the wife in the cab, he towed the car back to the dealership. While he was getting the flat fixed, a couple of the female employees took the wife under their wing, got her some dry clothes and hot coffee. When her car was ready, the flat was repaired, the car was washed and waxed, the interior was cleaned, and since the oil change was due, they changed that too. The total bill for all this work was $10. The cost normally charged for fixing a flat. A couple of days later, the reporter called me. "I'd like to say thanks to your guys for what they did for my wife. Can you have them meet with me in your lunchroom tomorrow?" The next day, my guys walked into a feast set up in their lunchroom. That's how I became friends with so many people. Over the next few months, I began to hear all about this little love group. The information came in about whom they were, where they were meeting, the times of their various sessions, and how it started. The guy who arranged it all was named Roger Stocks. About 1 year ago, he got to one of my wife's girlfriends, Judy. It was rumored he slipped her a drug or two and banged her for an entire weekend. Her husband thought she was visiting a sick aunt in another city. By the time the weekend was over, she was hooked on his larger than her husband's meat and some of the drugs. They then started meeting in a motel once a week. Roger was a predator. One woman was not enough for him. He soon had her getting some of her girlfriends to join them. Judy would do whatever he asked, just to keep getting him to screw her and supply her habit. They soon started having threesomes. Not Roger, Judy, and one of her girlfriends, but one of his male friends. She was their personal 304. The group soon consisted of 6 men and 6 women, my loving wife being one of the members. Roger soon got the women hooked on hard drugs. To support their habits, they became Roger's girls. He made sure that they all had customers for their charms. Roger kept them working a few afternoons a week and their habits under his control. He made sure they only got high after servicing one of his friends. He made sure that they weren't stoned out of their minds when they went home, only a little high. This was a very delicate balancing act. I put all my notes together and formulated a plan. My first step was to get Roger infected. With my connections, it was easy to find a crack hooker who had AIDS. She was 18 years old and still had her looks. She was told that if she hooked up with Roger and made him think she was just an innocent little girl, her junk would be free. With that kind of an incentive, she was having sex with Roger 3 or 4 times a week. Roger, being Roger, attempted to get her hooked on coke. We had to regulate her doses from us so that she didn't overdose. As smart as I thought I was, I really didn't know if my crack hooker infected Roger or not. With my luck, the a-hole would not get the disease. So, I changed my tactics. It didn't take long to discover his drug supplier, and with that my plan was in force. We would substitute his regular bag with a special mix. I put out the word that I wanted a lab tech that could take blood and administer a shot, all without leaving much of a trace. I met with the tech and explained what I wanted. I would arrange for a sleep drug to be mixed with the narcotics they used. Once the drug mixture worked, I wanted the tech to draw enough blood out of the needle Mark Roger used to inject himself in and use the hole for the blood test for AIDS. I explained to the tech that we didn't need to test the girl. She was already infected with AIDS. The tech did her job perfectly. When she brought me the vials of blood, she commented, "If the test comes back negative, let me know. I can arrange to get some live virus and will infect him directly." The test came back positive. I had him. The next part was both easy and hard. The easy part was waiting a few months so that they could pass the bug amongst themselves. They used condoms with their customers. I guess they did want to take a chance on catching something, if only they knew. The hard part was also the waiting. I knew I couldn't have any contact with Gloria. I didn't want to catch the bug myself. I'd been to my doctor, and he had tested me for STDs. I was clean. I thought about the innocent spouses catching the bug. To be exact, I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and then I figured, screw me. They'd get what they deserved. For the next 2 months, I had headaches, stomach flu, a pulled back muscles, etc. Anything that would keep me away from her. My kids were both teenagers and had the minimum physical contact with her. I even hired a cook housekeeper. Not only did that keep Gloria from touching our stuff, but fit in with my long-term plans for getting even with Gloria. Finally, the night to extract my revenge on Roger arrived. He was in a cheap motel, screwing my wife's best girlfriend, Judy, the one that introduced Gloria to this lifestyle. Roger was on top, rapidly approaching his climax when the sliding glass door to the ground floor motel room exploded in. 2 masked men entered. They used a shotgun on Roger. He was blown off his bed mate when the blast hit him in the head. She wasn't that lucky. A couple of the pellets entered through her eye and started a hemorrhage in her brain. She died on the way to the hospital. That was too bad. I wanted Judy to suffer longer. The masked gunmen then tossed a bag of counterfeit $100 bills into the room and left a couple of narcotics bags on the dresser. The plan was to hope the police figured the shooting was a drug deal gone wrong. The killings made the news for the next 3 days. All the news organizations put it together that the murder victims paid for their drugs with counterfeit money, and the dealers found out and returned to the motel room to extract revenge. That was exactly what I had planned. I watched my wife going through withdrawal for the next week. She tried to keep us from noticing, claiming she caught the flu from me. I loved it. One night about a week later, the news announced that Roger's autopsy revealed he had AIDS. Gloria fainted. A few days later, I got the call. Gloria had gone to the free clinic to be tested. It was time to put phase 2 of my plan into effect. I watched my wife walking around the house for the next couple of weeks. I could tell that her world was coming down around her. I was enjoying the shit out of that. I played the loving husband. "Are you feeling okay? Is anything bothering you, honey?" And of course, the killer. "Would you like to make love tonight?" Rubbing it in felt really good. I wonder what I would have done if she said yes. Probably another backache, I guessed. On night after dinner, Gloria asked if we could talk. I knew what was coming, so I asked her if the talk could wait for the weekend when both kids would be out of the house. I wanted to make her squirm for a few more days. Saturday finally arrived. Gloria had the cook prepare one of my favorite meals. She even made sure I had a couple of glasses of wine to mellow me out. It didn't work. I was too keyed up with my surprise for her. Gloria took me into the family room and started her discussion by telling me how much she loved me and how great the last 20 years were. While she was talking, I opened the briefcase I had placed by my chair. The first thing I did was flip an 8x10 photo of Roger, screwing her on the floor of a cheap motel room in front of her. Her face went white and she said, "I can explain. It was only the one time, and he forced me." I flipped another picture of her and Roger. This time she was on all fours, and he was doing her. She just stared at the picture. I started flipping more and more of the 8x10s. She realized I must know everything. I then flipped some more photos at her. These were taken by the police at the scene of the double homicide. She looked at the bloody remains of her lover and her friend Judy and passed out. I got up and made myself a fresh drink. I dumped the contents of the ice bucket on her prostrate form. She awoke with a start and began crying. I grabbed her by the hair and slapped the shit out of her. "No more lies and bullshit," I said. "I don't want any explanations from you. You're a lying piece of shit." I then said, "No divorce. I am too important for it to get out that I couldn't control my own wife. You will move all your things into the garage apartment now. You will no longer live in this house. If you think that you can escape me, don't even think about. I'll have you hunted down and killed, just like I did Roger and Judy," I admitted. "Only for you it will be slowly," I pointed out, smiling all the time. She started looking very scared. I tossed the Living with AIDS booklet in front of her and said, "This is how you will live your life from now on. In the apartment you will find orange biohazard plastic bags. You will place any item you touched and want to toss out in these bags. You will take these bags to the AIDS clinic when they are full and you are getting your treatments. If you screw up or give me any back talk, I will have one of your friends killed, slowly." I told her that both our kids were told what she did and what she caught. They elected to attend a boarding school instead of living here with you. I told her. They were afraid you might infect them. "Your good life is over," I informed her. "You screwed it up. From now on I'm going to make it hell." For the next year, I made her life a living hell. I sold her car, all her jewelry, all her fancy clothes, and anything she really liked. I even took her little dog to the vet and had it put down. I told her that I thought the dog was infected and didn't want anything around that might infect me. I even went so far as to kill a couple of her friends and tell her that they died because of some little thing she did. Well, actually, I didn't do the deed, but some friends of mine did. The important part was that they died hard and my wife knew why. All remaining members of the sex circle were visited by the health department. Their spouses and bed mates were informed and tested. The divorce rate around here really went up that year. As a side note, one of the spouses tested positive for another STD. She caught the clap from her boyfriend, who she was cheating with behind her unfaithful husband's back. This little revelation created another flurry of divorces. One evening I drugged Gloria's meal. When she woke up the next afternoon, she had a tattoo across her stomach. It read, "Biohazard, screw at your own risk." I guess I pushed her a little too hard. One day I came into her apartment and found her hanging from a ceiling fan. She had looped a cord from one of the blinds over the fan and then around her neck. The fan wasn't mounted high enough to break her neck when she kicked the chair away. She had strangled to death, a very hard way to go. The cops were curious about her living in the apartment until I told them it was her request. She had AIDS and didn't want to contaminate anyone. After the autopsy, the doctor confirmed that the AIDS in her system was regressing. The treatments she was on were working. It's ironic, isn't it? She killed herself to end her suffering. The suffering I was causing. The kids and I had a very private burial. The kids didn't miss her. They had moved on with their lives. I was the only one who felt any regret that she was dead. She had figured out a way to keep me from making her life any more miserable. Yeah, I know I'm an a-hole, but my actions have moved me up in the crime family. I am now number 2. My treatment of my wife's infidelity added to my reputation as being a tough guy. I still visit my wife's grave a couple of times a year, but I still haven't managed a permanent stain on her stone yet. Now let's check the story from Gloria's side. The pain in my neck was terrible. The thin rope just kept getting tighter and tighter. I tried to get my fingers between the rope and my neck, but I just couldn't quite make it. My heart was pounding, and my feet were kicking out, looking for something to stand on. It was becoming harder and harder to get a breath. I suddenly didn't want to die anymore. I tried to call out to God to save me, but nothing came out. The rope was too tight. Suddenly my life started to repeat before me. I could see all the previous years rolling by. I was born in the Midwest to a pair of party animals. At least that's what I thought until I got to high school. I realized then that they were just common, ordinary drunks. They got drunk every day and usually passed out in the living room. Our family income came from welfare. Most of it was because of me living with them. They were always kind to me. I was their meal ticket. I stayed with them until I graduated from high school. I was not smart enough to go to college, even if the money to pay the way had been there. I grabbed the last welfare check from my parents and took off west. I lost my cherry when I was 15. I really liked sex. I soon found that if I spread my legs, all the boys said they loved me. I got the love I never got at home as a kid, and the boys got laid. It was a win-win for all involved. As I neared graduation, I woke up knowing the boys didn't really love me. They only wanted sex. My reputation and my parents' drunkenness made up my mind to leave town after graduation. I had no skills or any real training, so I spent the next 2 years waiting tables and learning how to charm men for bigger tips. I was cute. I had a great body and a pretty face. I learned how to smile and flirt. I guess I was lucky. While I wasn't a virgin by any means, I didn't really need to put out unless I wanted to. I finally landed in Las Vegas. This city was my kind of place. I managed to get a job as a cocktail waitress. I was underage, but I looked about 25. He knew I was underage, but I kept flirting and giving hints that he might get lucky if I got the job. I got the job, but he didn't get lucky. He was a fat, smelly slob. Since I was young and pretty, I was assigned to the 8 p.m. to midnight slot. This was the time frame where the waitresses really did well in tips. The only waitresses that earned more worked the high-end private rooms. They were making $1,000 or more in tips a night. I figured that they were servicing the guys, but later found out that absolutely nothing went on behind those closed doors. Actually, I found out that more guys were getting free feels off me than the girls in those private rooms. The rich guys in the private rooms were more interested in gambling than feeling up their waitress. My goal in life was to work in one of those rooms. More money and no roaming hands. There was an auto dealers convention in town. As any waitress will tell you, salesmen were a pain in the butt, literally. Their egos are so big. It's a wonder they can get a hat on. They hugged you, tried to kiss you, and grabbed your, well, you know. To make matters even worse, they were lousy tippers. The lounge manager warned us in advance about how they'd act. We were told, if you don't like it, I can replace you with someone who will like it. In other words, put up with it, or take a walk. I put up with it, and I had a few extra bruises and pinch marks to prove it. One night right after I started my shift, 5 guys sat in my section. The first thing they did was start rearranging the tables and chairs to their liking. Now that is one thing that pisses the wait staff off, because we have to put everything back when the clods leave. I looked them over. They were the typical salesmen. All of them were between 40 and 50 with big bellies and loud mouths, except one. He was around 30, dark-haired, and sort of Italian-looking. Actually, he was a cutie. I walked over to the table and gave all of them my best smile and in a flirty voice asked, "Would you gentlemen like to order drinks?" I was addressing the cute one. The cute one smiled a little embarrassed smile and started to answer when one of the other guys at the table ordered a bottle of Jack Daniels and 6 glasses. I had counted 5 of them, so I asked, "Who's the 6th one for?" "Expecting someone else?" "You darling, of course." The smartass replied. "It's going to be a long night," I thought. Actually, they turned out to be a fun bunch of guys. I was sorry when midnight came around and my shift ended. I was sorry because the young guy was a big tipper, not that they were a fun bunch. It turned the young guy was the owner of a dealership, and these guys were his best salesmen. It was his bonus to them for their hard work. He bought every round in cash from one of the largest rolls of $100 bills I had ever seen. And the best part was that he kept telling me to keep the change. It was the first time I ever made $1,000 plus in tips. The hotel was pretty nice to its wait staff. We were allowed to eat at any of the buffets after our shift was over as long as we remembered, paying customers first. So, I found myself waiting behind someone in line who was taking entirely too long making up his mind. I realized it was the cute guy from the lounge. "Why can't you make up your mind? You did fine in the lounge," I said. He turned around with a frown on his face as if to say something, but saw me and just lit up the line with his smile. "I'm Tony. Would you join me for a late-night snack?" I gave him one of my best smiles. "Only if you hurry up making your selection. My feet hurt and I want to sit down with you. The food's really good here. Let me help you choose. Oh, and by the way, my name's Gloria." We talked and talked until 4 a.m. I was so very tired, but never wanted the night to end. I asked, Can we meet for a snack tomorrow night? And we did, every night for the next 4 nights. It would have been longer, but he had a flight out. 2 weeks later, he was back and we continued our late-night snacks. By the end of the first week, we were having breakfast in bed also. We needed the rest. We were screwing our brains out. By the time we were together for 2 weeks, I agreed to go home with him on a trial basis. Our trial basis lasted about 18 months before we married in a civil ceremony. We didn't want our daughter to be born out of wedlock. 3 years later, our son was born. I had everything a woman could want: a loving husband, 2 great kids, a beautiful home, a new car every year, and more money that I could really spend. So why was I so bored after my kids were becoming young adults? I missed the excitement from when I worked those many years ago in Vegas. I just wandered around the malls and high-end shops looking for the same level of excitement I used to feel. One afternoon while I was out shopping at a local mall, I ran into my girlfriend Judy and her boyfriend Roger. I was surprised to see them in public because Judy was married and not to Roger. Wasn't she worried about being caught? I'd have to ask her when we are alone next time, I thought. The 3 of us had a very enjoyable afternoon at the mall. Roger proved to be very funny and enjoyable to be around. I could see why Judy likes him. While he didn't even closely compare to my husband, it was kind of exciting to be around him. I started running into them more and more by accident. We were soon stopping for a drink before going back to our respective houses. One afternoon, while Judy and I were having coffee at her house, I asked, "Aren't you worried that your husband Louis will find out about Roger?" She said, "No. Louis has a girlfriend at work named Sue. She's a divorcee with 2 kids. I've checked her out and she's about 30 pounds overweight with a lousy blonde eye job and a whinny voice. I don't know what Louis sees in her, but she satisfies his desires, and he leaves me alone. Roger, on the other hand, rings my chimes." Then she dropped the bomb. "I can share Roger with you anytime. He like that." I couldn't get the thought of Roger between my legs out of my mind. Every time I imagined him making love to me, I got wetter and wetter. Soon it was on my mind all the time. I knew I'd never cheat on Tony, but it was nice to dream about another man. About a month later, it came to a head. My husband took the kids camping for a long weekend. They all knew I hated camping. So years before, they agreed to leave me home instead of having to listen to me complain all weekend. After they left, Judy, Roger, and I went to a fancy restaurant for dinner and dancing on Saturday night. We ate, drank, and Roger danced with both of us. At some point in the evening, Judy took a pill and gave me one. She explained, "It will loosen you up and you'll have a lot more fun." I took the pill. Later, I woke up in a bedroom, completely naked with Roger in me. I was climaxing over and over again. I was in heaven. Judy was sitting in a chair watching us. It turned me on with her watching us. I peeked again. Later, I woke up and found Judy sitting nearby. We spent the time together, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. When I turned my head, I noticed Roger kneeling beside me, quietly keeping me company. The 3 of us stayed in that room until Sunday afternoon, enjoying each other's presence. Judy drove me home in my car, and Roger followed behind. Once we arrived, Judy helped me get settled and comfortable. I slept deeply until Monday afternoon, after which I cleaned up and waited for my family to return that evening. I was glad that I had my tubes tied after the birth of my son. I could enjoy my illicit sex without the worry of pregnancy. Tony made love to me that night. I was like a wild woman because I was reliving my weekend with Roger and Judy. Tuesday morning, after Tony and the kids left the house, Judy showed up for coffee. We talked about what a turn on the weekend with Roger was. Somehow, Judy and I ended up in bed together. She taught me the pleasures of woman and woman sex. After she left, I realized that I now had 2 more people who loved me, Judy and Roger. The 3 of us started meeting at various motels 2 or 3 times a week. I was hooked on the sex with them. Judy still kept giving me one of those pills, and the pills just made everything better. On those days, I went wild on my husband that night. I guess the pill was still working on me. Tony never complained about the sex on those days. Soon Roger and Judy had me using coke to enhance the afternoons we spent together. It was a nice drug and I loved the feeling it added to our sex. One day, while Roger and I were spending time together, I suddenly felt a sharp pinch, almost like getting a shot. Right after, an overwhelming wave of euphoria washed over me. The feeling was so intense that I eventually lost consciousness. When I woke back up, Judy was playing with my body. "I knew you'd like the shot I gave you. Pretty good, wasn't it?" she asked. The shot became a regular part of our lovemaking. Whenever Judy injected me during sex, I always passed out for about 30 minutes afterwards. One afternoon, after an especially enjoyable session, I woke up feeling different. Roger was inside me, and Judy was on top of me. I was too lost in the moment to stop them, focused only on the pleasure I was experiencing. I spent the rest of the afternoon being their plaything. My relationship with my two friends progressed to the next level. I was becoming a doxy. All I wanted was the shot and great sex. Roger and Judy obliged with both. I don't really know when it started, but soon I was having sex with Roger's friends also. Roger or Judy would take me to a motel, have me strip, and then give me a shot. Men would soon start showing up, and I'd have sex with them. One week Roger had to go out of town. I experienced my first case of withdrawal. I was really hurting. I called Judy. She came right over with a shot. She told me the shots were narcotics. They had been giving me small doses, but I was still hooked. From now on, to keep getting my medicine, I had to do what they told me. They set me up 2 or 3 times a week in a motel where I took on all comers. Every month or so Roger threw a party for us. Yes, us. It seems there were 6 of us women in his harem, and he'd get some of his guy friends to round out the group. Sometimes there were more guys than women, so we did 2 or 3 guys at a time. Sometimes there were not enough guys, and we women made love to each other. Judy would visit me at home on the weekend, when I was alone. She made sure I got my regular shot. I was in a mellow mood all the time. The shots just kept me a little high. One evening during the 6 o'clock news, it was reported that Roger and Judy were found dead in a local motel, apparently the result of a drug deal gone bad. Now where would I get my medicine from? I thought. I started into withdrawal. I ached. I vomited. I was freezing 1 minute and roasting the next, and my skin felt as if I had ants crawling all over it. I was a mess. I stayed in my room claiming I had a bad case of the flu. My husband was an angel. He asked if he could get me anything, fed me soup, and cleaned up my messes when I vomited. One evening after I started feeling better, I joined the family in the living room for the 6 o'clock news. The news anchor had an update to Roger and Judy's murder story. It seems that they were part of a sex ring and both had AIDS. I fainted. A couple of days later, I made an appointment at a free clinic for STD testing. Way too quickly they called my cell with the results. I had tested positive for AIDS. Now I really wanted my medicine to make my troubles fade away. I started making a plan on how to break the news to Tony. It took a couple of days, but I think I had created a believable lie. After dinner one evening, I asked Tony if we could talk after the kids went to bed. He suggested waiting until Saturday when the kids would be staying overnight with their friends. When Saturday rolled around, I had the new cook housekeeper make Tony's favorite meal. I even opened a nice bottle of wine to help mellow him out. After dinner, I sat Tony down in the family room and began my story. I told him how much I loved him and how great the last 20 years were. While I was talking, he opened the briefcase he had placed by his chair. The first thing he did was flip an 8x10 photo of Roger screwing me on the floor of a cheap motel room in front of me. My face went white and I said, "I can explain. It was only the one time, and he forced me." He flipped another picture of me and Roger. This time I was on all fours, and he was doing me. I just stared at the picture. He started flipping more and more of the 8x10s. I realized he must know everything. He then flipped some more photos at me. These were taken by the police at the scene of the double homicide. I looked at the bloody remains of my lover and my friend Judy and passed out. I was awakened by the cold water that was thrown on my face. Tony grabbed me by the hair and slapped the shit out of me. It was the first time he had ever hit me. I'll never forget the rest of the conversation. "No more lies and bullshit," he said. "I don't want any explanations from you. You're a lying piece of shit, Gloria." He then said, "No divorce. I am too important for it to get out that I couldn't control my own wife. You will move all your things into the garage apartment now. You will no longer live in this house. If you think that you can escape me, don't even think about. I'll have you hunted down and killed, just like I did Roger and Judy," he admitted. "Only for you it will be slowly," he pointed out, smiling all the time. What had I done? Where was my loving husband? I thought. I had always felt that somewhere deep down inside, Roger had a dark side. What did I do to bring it out? I puzzled. I guess I wasn't that bright. My life in hell stated. He forced me to move into the servant's apartment over the garage. He gave all my beautiful clothes and things to Goodwill. I was left with ugly shift-style dresses and plain cotton underwear. He even tossed my bras out because he said that having sagged tits was what I deserved. He made me put my food waste, used personal hygiene products in the orange biohazard bags. I had to take them with me when I went to the AIDS clinic for my treatments, to dispose of them. He even took away my new car and replaced it with an ancient Yugo. The heat didn't work and there was no AC. The a-hole even had it painted biohazard orange. Even my children deserted me. They enrolled in a boarding school just to keep away from me. This was my life for the next year. I guess the proverbial straw happened one morning when I woke up, feeling as if I had been drugged. I had a tattoo across my stomach. It read, "Biohazard, screw at your own risk." I started to formulate a plan to take my own life. It seemed like my life was over, and all I wanted was to be free from it. I was still trapped in that situation, and my throat was hurting intensely. I couldn't move my arms up anymore. The room was starting to go black. I really didn't want to die anymore. Someone might find me if I could just draw one more breath. Thanks for listening. Share your opinion in comment section, and also do like and subscribe to the channel.